Well, welcome, Brandon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, what was the allure, the catalyst for you becoming involved in the custom suit business in the first place?
Oh man, growing up, I always dressed up a ton. I always liked looking sharp, and
Really?
yeah, I don't know what it was. I just always did. I mean, Christmas concerts in elementary school, and I had to have like 3-piece suits on, the whole works. So I always had a passion for it. I don't know if it just made me feel good, give me good confidence. They always talk about dress for the job you want, etc. I always knew where
For
I wanted
sure.
to go in life, so I wanted to start dressing that way early, I guess. And then when I was in college, I actually did a lot of political work. I was working for senators and working 2 other jobs just to be able to afford, day-to-day living.
Yeah.
And at some point I was just like, "You know what? I need a break from the politics." Like I was working on campaigns, etc. And I found a job with a custom suit company.
Okay.
And so I started there. I was doing prospecting and just helping the regional vice president of that office, and really fell in love with it. I didn't think that I contemplated going into that after school, but I still thought I was gonna follow my original path, so I went that way, and then,
You walked
you
in
know
there and it was like, I
li
found my people.
yeah, life takes a unique turns, right? I mean, things happen in life, and I found myself back into the custom suit world, a few years later.
Awesome. And so you began working in it full time then with this VP?
I with a different one, actually.
Okay.
So, I actually reached out to that company because I had been out of school for a few years doing other jobs, and mainly sales jobs at that point, and it was
Okay.
time to either go back to law school, which was the plan, or figure out my next step. And I had been at an organization that was very entrepreneurial. We launched, I think, 5 or 6 businesses in about a year,
Wow.
and it was incredible, the best time of my life. And I was just like, "You know what? This is what I need something like this. I don't wanna be a lawyer anymore. I don't wanna just read documents." So, I applied, and they, had me like, "Yes, we're gonna bring you to this one office in Charlotte." And I was waiting and waiting, and I'm not somebody to wait. I'm a little bit impatient. So I reached out to the executives of the company and said, "Hey, I really want to make this happen. What can we do to speed it up?" And lo and behold, the one gentleman was going to another more startup based custom suit business
Okay.
and said, "Hey, why don't you come with me there?"
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was his first hire at the new business, and it worked out very well.
Wow. So you got the opportunity to marry a couple of your passions, that startup, raw,
Yep.
run by the seat of your pants kind of environment with custom suit business.
Exactly. It actually worked out way, way better because the other company had been around for many, many years. They're the largest player in the space. When people get in there and they get in the higher positions, they don't leave ever. So I was able to get in on the early ground with this other one and kind of work my way up very quickly through proving myself in sales.
Right, and so when did you or I guess what was your role there then? As
So
far
I
as
started out just sales. I mean,
okay,
back then you cold called, you'd hustle. I mean, my
yeah.
first day was downtown Columbus, and we would walk door to door into offices, and just we would do competitions of who can get the most business cards when you come back. Loser has to buy lunch. And it was just old school sales, door to door. And then, making tons of calls every day. At night, I'd go home. I was, by myself. So I would just eat dinner. I'd get home late, and I would just be emailing. LinkedIn was just getting popular, and I was hitting up prospects on LinkedIn, trying to build my business. And then within 3 months, they moved me to Chicago, and I became the Chicago manager. And
Okay.
then quickly after that, I became a regional manager and I had a few territories. And then within 2 years, I was running a third of the country. So it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, everything that you described to me focuses on the sales and business development, but
Mhm.
not necessarily the nuts and bolts of how to make suits in the business end of it. How did you learn all that?
So the gentleman who brought me on was well known in the industry, and he taught me everything from the ground up. And luckily, I had him because the company we had gone to, they were kind of a little more bootstrappy in the sense of like learning the skills. They had the money to fund it, but
Okay.
the skill side was not quite there. And that's why they hired him to come in and lead as president. So I quickly then became the person who was teaching at month in, month out. So every new training class, I was hiring, recruiting, in addition to selling and managing other team members. I was flying down to corporate every month to train the new class that was coming in.
Okay, and what were you training them in?
So a little bit of everything. I mean, you have to
Okay,
learn measurement skills, right? One of the most important parts is that suit has to fit, right? The garments have to fit well. You got to learn how to do a fitting once the garment's delivered. You
okay,
have to be able to do a proper fitting to make sure it actually does fit properly. And any alterations that you need to be able to translate that to a tailor.
right,
You got to do the sales skills, obviously. You got to learn how to build your business. And then styling was a big part of it as well, because a lot of people come in, maybe they think they have understandings of fashion and style and how to mix, but like when it comes to patterns, like you can see, I have a plaid jacket on. Some people might do a similar scaled plaid shirt. Well, that's going to
okay,
look too busy, right? It's going to
right,
overlap.
yep,
So we have to teach
yep,
them things like that.
right,
Color training as well. So it got pretty intensive.
right. So it sounds like, and these were like salespeople that you're training, correct?
Correct.
So
Yes. I
the
mean,
sales team really had to wear multiple hats. So not only the sales part of
absolutely.
it,
Yep.
but then, like you said, the ability to understand colors for that particular person and the fitting as well, they did?
Absolutely. Yeah. You are definitely the whole business, right? As
Right.
one person, essentially. I mean, you got to be able to help them pick out fabrics, pick out the garments that are going to look good, that also function for what they need. You need to be able to style the outfits together with shirts and accessories. You got to have salesmanship because you need to be able to, upsell them and get your sales. You want to hit President's Club, etc. And then you need all the technical skills of measuring and fitting.
So it sounded like in an earlier conversation that although this was your full-time paid work as an
Mhm.
employee, at some point you were also doing this a little bit as a side hustle. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, I've actually I think most of your guests, the podcast I've heard, everyone starts as a side hustle. Maybe they make it a full time hustle. Mine's kind of like the reverse. I started
Okay.
full time in this, and then again, same sort of thing. Pandemic. I had actually started my own company at one point and grew that to multiple seven figures. We ended up selling it. At that point, I was the sole owner, so I sold it to another business who was much larger,
Was this in the
and
custom a custom
it
suit
was in
business?
correct. Yes, it was a
Okay.
custom suit. So once I sold that, it was a couple years before the pandemic, and I had moved back to the East Coast to help open multiple territories on the East Coast for this company. And my goal was to just become the COO and just run that business. I was kind of thought I was done with the sales part of it. I wanted to try my hand at just running a bigger business, right,
Right.
from what mine was, and see if I could do it. Kind of just a challenge to myself. And pandemic hit, became a big challenging year.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
Who needed
you know,
suits anymore?
yeah, right. Everyone was
Yeah.
staying home, so it,
Yeah.
it was a bad year for suits and custom suit world, and it didn't look like I was going to be able to get that opportunity for quite some time. So I was like, you know what? Let's just try a new industry. Let's see what happens. Left and became the COO of a company that's a completely different industry, and now this has kind of come back full circle of like a side hustle because look, I'm a shorter guy. That was one of the reasons I was drawn to custom, was because I couldn't find things that fit off the rack for me.
Right.
So I need to make my own clothing regardless. So I need to keep my relationships with factories open. And I had a few clients and friends and family who say, "Yeah, I still want you to make my stuff. Like I don't trust anybody else." So, I just started on the weekends. If somebody called me up, say, "Hey, you want to come over and make me some stuff?" I would do it. I mean, the money, the opportunity is very, very good. So
Right.
how do I turn it down?
Right.
Keeps me fresh in the industry and pays for my own clothing habit, I guess.
I like you referred
Yeah.
to that as a habit. Yeah, my addiction.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And from what you described then, it sounds like you're doing it as much as that demand is requesting. It's not like you're going out looking at business, but you got friends and family calling you up. It's like, "Sure, I'll do it for you." That kind of
Yeah,
thing.
essentially at this point, because I do enjoy the business. It's something that's ingrained in me. I don't think I can ever get rid of it
Right.
altogether. So it just kind of keeps pulling me back in little by little.
Right.
Yeah, and I love it. So it works out. I can do as much or as little as I want. It's
Okay.
a great boost to the bank account. I make some extra cash on the side, and again, I
Perfect.
love the industry, so it keeps me fresh.
Yeah. Well, you got an extensive background in custom suit sales, but I think you told me in an earlier conversation that that wasn't necessarily a requirement for someone wanting to get into the business. So, paint us a picture, if you would, of how a person actually operates this business. And I trust through that it'll shed some light on a number of things, including what skills and experience are needed.
Sure, I think a lot of people enter this industry because they enjoy fashion.
Right.
They like dressing up, they like clothes, they maybe have a good eye, and they think they can style people. So that's kind of the initial lure, I would say.
Is there many
So
women doing it, or is it predominantly men?
absolutely, when I had my own business, we had clothers across the country that were running. I was also still selling my own clients. And then I actually did a consulting gig for another company that was an up and coming startup, private equity backed custom clothing company.
Okay.
And they hired me. It was kind of the impetus actually of what I'm doing now with my course that we'll talk about soon. But they had many, many women that worked for them. And some people worked full time, some worked part time.
Okay.
And so I was actually able to teach both full time and part timers in that world. And there are a few other companies that are heavily women based.
Right. So how does it actually work then? Like,
The
how
whole,
does
the
the
whole system.
business work? So you go and drum up business, and we'll get to the ways on how to do that.
Yep.
But then you've connected with a potential client. Then what's the process or process, depending
Yes.
on what country you're listening in?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it is really, a relationship business. You have to be able to build those relationships up. And once I have my relationship, I'm going to go meet with that person. I'm going to set an appointment. I like to go to their house personally
Okay.
because I want to see in their wardrobe. I want to see their closet. It also helps for measurements because I can have them put on garments that they currently own, be able to look at them and say, okay, I think we should take in the leg a little bit here. Do you feel comfortable with that, et cetera? Right. So a lot of times I could try to do the home, but otherwise, a lot of times the office. It was usually like a come to me type of service. So it was like a
Yes.
luxury service.
Yeah.
We do have showrooms of different companies I've worked for. I had one for a while as well that people could come to us. But anyway, it's a first appointment, hour and a half average probably time frame.
Okay.
You go through, talk about your needs, what you're looking for,
Right.
go through the fabrics, pick out all the garments, style them up. Then you got to get into the measurement part. And that's kind of the really time consuming part usually,
Okay.
unless the person was picky on the fabrics.
So that clarifies one thing for me then. My clients
Yep.
are I'm going to be visiting them physical in a space. So this isn't something that we're just ordering online.
Today's world is more online based.
Okay.
One interesting thing is during the pandemic, the way we stayed afloat was we were doing Zoom appointments.
Oh, wow.
So we were actually to the point where I even coached people. Now it takes a little bit more practice and know how, but I was actually coaching wives to measure their husbands.
Right. Right.
And so they were actually measuring for the first time. Repeat orders was very easy to do online,
Okay.
obviously, because it's just fabrics and picking
Got it.
out garments.
Okay. Right.
But that's how we stayed afloat.
Right. So it is possible to do a remote one
Absolutely.
then, because you're
Yep.
guiding them through the measurement process.
Sure.
Okay.
You need to be
Didn't
a
want
little
it.
bit more, you need to be a little more skilled in the measurement side, but yes, possible.
Right. Okay. So getting back to your before I jumped in there.
Oh,
So
no worries.
you've got the measurements or you're in the process of it.
Yeah. So about an hour and a half for the measurements, you pick out everything. Then it's going to take, it varies based on the factory where it's located. I've made garments in Italy that can take quite a long time. They take
Okay.
their good old time in Italy, but it is a wonderful product. So I would say 4 to 8 weeks on average to make the garment.
Okay.
And then you have to schedule a fitting to come, back to that person, deliver the garment. It's a great opportunity to upsell. And obviously you're going to like zone in their fit, make sure it's ideal. You might have to do some, just like you would see on TV with the chalk and
Right.
the pins and whatnot. You're going to mark it up and take it to a tailor shop after to have alterations.
Wow. And a person can learn basically how to do all that online. And again, we'll get to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But it is possible. Okay. So what kind of price range are we looking at for the suits?
That's a great question because it's varied over the years. I would say for anything decent, $600 at least. Most of the garments I dealt with were more luxury, so our average, I think, was 12.95, somewhere in that range. I had
Okay.
plenty of customers buying 3, 4, $5,000 suits.
Right.
But I'd say, 1,000 range is like a great price point.
Right. And where would the manufacturer be for that sort of price point?
But you can get it in multiple locations. So
Okay.
I did have US-based manufacturing at different times that I could get around that 1,000 to 1,200 range at the starting point. China was big for us. We had, there's a variety of factories in China, some very good, some
Right.
not so good. I've
Okay.
spent many years vetting and testing factories. We would constantly be looking for new resources.
Yep.
And then I had found a couple in, like I said, Italy, they're on the higher end, but I also recently found some in Thailand and Portugal.
Okay.
and they
Nice.
were both great companies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's use the $1,000 price point just as an example for round numbers. So, what amount of that would you be paying to the manufacturer?
Depends on your markup.
Okay.
So everybody was a little bit different. When I got into the industry, the standard was around 2.5 to 2.75 markup. It then kind of became standard at a 3 times markup.
Okay.
So, if I was paying, a little over three, that would be like a $1,000 suit.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
people charge 3.5 times to 4 times, but at that point, I think it's getting a little bit,
Right.
too rich there. I think
Sure.
three is a good margin. It's healthy, allows room for like referral credits. I would often give, if somebody referred me, I would give them a shirt and the referral a shirt. So the referral and the referee would both get a shirt. So that would allow me room to do things like that, maybe a discount
Right.
here and there for packages and bulk sales. It would also allow for room because if you have alterations, ideally you just have it on that first order. Hopefully they keep their weight the same and you adjust the pattern appropriately and you only have the alterations mainly up front on that first order.
And I was going
Um,
to ask you about that. So, you take the measurements, the order
mhm,
gets placed, the suit comes back, depending X number of weeks. But you do another fitting.
correct.
If alterations are necessary, do you do them locally then? You wouldn't
I
be
do.
sending them back to Italy or Portugal.
No, no,
No.
no. There are different levels of custom garments, right?
Okay.
So the ones you see on TV where it's like a half garment, not really fully constructed, and like you might see it in Europe or from movies years ago. You don't see it as much now, but that's like a
Okay.
full bespoke. Okay. So the full bespoke garment is done in multiple fittings. So when I had the one manufacturer in Italy, it was a full bespoke garment. So that one actually, they would build it. It would not come fully constructed. I mean, it's raw. You would see the insides of the garment, the canvas, all the raw parts on the inside.
Right. Wow.
You would send it over. I would do a fitting, take pictures, mark it up, ship it back to Italy. They would then put it together, ship it back over, and then I'd have final alterations that I would then do locally.
Right.
But
Because the
for the majority of the
manufacturer,
garment,
the tailor, they probably wouldn't want anybody else touching their suit.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when it's not fully completed or constructed, right? So
Yeah.
on most garments, it's what, we use the word custom, but it's called made to measure. So, it's not quite that full bespoke
Okay.
experience. So we're completing it initially, and then we're altering it after it's completed only. And
Right.
that's
So
the
kind of a
majority of
hybrid almost.
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so you can just do those locally, get a good relationship with the tailor near you you trust.
Right. And then that lowers the price point. It gives somebody that
Absolutely.
middle average to get something truly custom as far as the fit and the color, everything custom for them, but not go to that
Absolutely.
major expense or of the full on.
Exactly. I mean, I think the whole world's going custom, right? I mean, you see it all the time. Car
Mhm.
manufacturers, furniture, everyone's loving customization, right? So after the pandemic, oddly enough, custom suits just flew through the roof again. They've had some of their best years ever. So
Really?
it's a really hot industry right now. I never would have guessed that. I would have thought it was going to really suffer for a while. And
Right.
every company I know has had their best years in the past 2 years.
So you're
So
suggesting the old like yoga pants fad is
maybe. Well, the interesting thing is also the product line expanded because of the pandemic. So the one benefit of it was now there are way more. When I was in it heavily, we had some custom sweaters, some custom polos and jeans. It wasn't very prevalent. Now
Okay.
you see custom everything.
Right.
So, and
Okay.
I think women are wearing a lot more custom now too. I used to have a decent amount of women customers, but not too many. Now, way more women clients across the board.
Ah, nice. So going back to our $1,000 example, $300 cost
Mhm.
plus shipping, who pays for the shipping generally?
Yeah, shipping will be built into that. So,
Oh, okay.
I would usually do like a 3 times like round up to the nearest hundred is
Okay.
kind of how I priced mine. So
Right.
if it was, let's say it's 280 for the garment and the fabric, the construction and the fabric, maybe it's like 50 for shipping. And then I'm building, merchant fee. It's gonna be like 3% or whatever if you're using a credit card. Maybe
Right.
you just do checks if you don't want to worry about that.
Right.
And then I would just multiply that times three and round up to the nearest hundred.
Right. And so really, I'm just trying to think of other expenses. So there's your time
The
for the
alterations.
fittings. Yep. The alterations.
The alterations you want to keep ideally within like 5%
Got it. Okay.
is a
And then
good
that you'll
running
get a
rate.
quote from your local, right, from your local tailor.
Yeah, you would go and
Do
price
that.
out. I always, tested a few tailors, priced out ahead of time, came to an arrangement, told them I was gonna bring them a bunch of garments and negotiated a price.
Right.
And then ideally, if I'm doing well in measurements and I have a reliable factory,
Yeah.
I could keep that range under 5%. I think I averaged maybe 2%, but I also had a lot of repeat business.
Nice. Well, what do you think the biggest challenges for a person entering the business that they might not anticipate?
Well, I would say that reliable manufacturer, right?
Mm,
The beauty and the curse, I guess, of like the globalization is yes, you can find a lot of manufacturers now more easily than you could when I started.
yes.
I had to really do a lot of searching to find manufacturers. There are websites now you can find manufacturers. The problem is there are a lot of bad manufacturers. And
Right.
so and it tends to be that the ones that are not as good are the ones that are reaching out to everybody and readily available. Well, makes sense because the ones who are really good don't need to find customers. Customers find them somehow, right? They
Right.
get referrals, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
you could spend a
Yeah.
lot of money up front. So I think you have to just really be careful about vetting factories so you don't blow a lot of money just testing and having bad experiences. And I would definitely test on yourself, on friends and family first before you
Right.
start working on clients.
Right. And, oftentimes when you're importing from another country, there's like multiple quantity order, but what you're talking about here is very custom. So are
Correct.
you able to order like one suit at a time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All
Yeah, these
right.
are all one-off. So that is why the costs, if I were to even the same level construction, same cloth, et cetera, if I were to order that just as a ready-made garment, just 40 regular,
Mhm.
they're going to require potentially more, but it would be a much less expensive garment per garment. So you are paying more because of the customization because it's one-off, but it's definitely possible.
Right. And so a person would, and I'm thinking of the consumer now,
Mhm.
would want to order a custom suit if they are, say, difficult to fit. That would be one of the reasons?
That's one of the reasons. A lot of people, I don't think I don't have everything on this garment here, but a lot of people like to take these buttonholes or a buttonhole down here. They like to customize, choose their buttons. They want to choose the linings that they have on the inside. And
Okay.
so, people just like to have their own flair, their own sense of style.
Right.
So it's definitely style as well as the fit.
And I suppose that experience too of getting something custom made.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it makes you feel, again, it's more readily available and affordable now than ever. But it's nice to make you feel a little bit special. You get, having the tailor measure you, and you go in some of these shops and people that do have stores, they really take care of you, and it's an experience, right? And
Right.
and I mean, look, for the people that when I would go to their home or office, what's better than that? It's
Yes.
so half those guys that I was working with did not like shopping. They did not want to shop, so they loved the fact that I would come to them and make all the clothes.
I'm actually in that category of someone
Yeah,
that hates shopping. I really, really do.
I am too, actually. Yeah.
And years ago, my sister connected me with this woman. She ran it all out of her home. It was so
Okay.
nice. And
Oh
the thing I
wow.
loved about her is she was so honest. I remember
Yep.
she asked me to put on a suit and I'm like, Annika, that's really ugly. No, 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 no. And she says, just try it on. And I put it on and it's like, oh my God. Well, I bought it and I swear I wore it so much, I wore the elbows out. It was my favorite suit. But on the other side of it, I would pick up something up the rack and I would go to want to try it on. And she'd like, yeah, no, put that back. Put that back. She was
And that's
honest,
the beauty of it.
and I really needed that because
Yep.
it's not something I like to do. So I like that guidance, so I could see that.
Well, I think that, you highlight another great point that we didn't talk about is that relationship, right?
Right.
Because my people trusted me, right? My clients
Yeah.
trusted me. So like they wanted me to be blunt, just like you wanted your
Yes, for sure.
stouts to be blunt, right? They were like, hey, you tell me, does this look good or not? Like you tell me what to. I would have
Right.
clients that would text me, going out to
Aw.
an event, like, is this am I good here? Can I wear this? And
Yeah.
I even had
I could
clients that I would
totally see that because I would do
oh
that too.
yeah. I had my one friend's colorblind, so I like basically granimaled his closet so he could mix and
Oh,
match everything
wow.
very easily. I used to do what was it called? There was another app called like Pick Stitch. I don't know if you remember that app, and it would like put
Mm-mm.
3 or 4 different pictures together. I don't know if it's still around or
Okay.
not, but I would actually take pictures of when I would save some of it. A lot of times I would sell packages. So
Okay.
somebody would buy 3 suits, 6 shirts, and whatever ties, accessories. And so I would use this that pick stitch and I would put together like the suit, the shirt, and the tie combination. And I
Nice.
would snap them and then I would send it to them. So now they have their outfits. They could just easily get up every day and just pick one of the pictures and go with it.
Keep it simple for them.
Exactly.
Right, and they could focus on whatever it is that they're skilled at doing.
Exactly. Busy business people, CEOs, finance, a lot of times. And so they don't want to have to think. They just want to get up and go.
I'm thinking that if somebody wanting to start this as a side hustle, they are operating out of their space, but they don't really wanna bring people
Mhm.
into their home, and maybe their client is also working from home.
Mhm.
Is there an opportunity for the side hustle hero to develop a relationship with a complementary bricks and mortar store that they could use their space? I'm thinking, I don't know, a higher end shirt company or some retail store that would benefit from having that new client in their space that my side hustle hero could bring them to. Do you see where I'm getting at with this?
Great question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
over the course of my years, I actually had multiple arrangements like that.
Okay.
At when I was in Chicago, we actually had an office, so some clients go there, but I actually had a really great relationship with our tailor. And so sometimes I would just meet the
Mm.
tailor at the tailor shop
Oh,
or
perfect.
my clients at the tailor shop rather,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
I would even for the measurements and the original appointment, so I would just have them come meet me there. The tailor didn't mind because he knew A, I was gonna be bringing them back for the alterations, so he was gonna get the
Right,
business. And B, they would then bring their other clothing in because they ended up really building a relationship with the tailor also. And so he didn't offer custom clothing, and so
right.
it was just a perfect relationship. So
Oh,
I did it
nice.
there.
Yeah.
This one may sound odd, but I actually did it in a men's hair salon.
Oh,
So
yeah?
the high-end men's salon, you might
Ah,
think, "Oh, all the hair flying around," but I was kinda around the corner and
right,
secluded. But it was perfect. It was like a, $60 haircut, and so these
right,
are business people downtown Chicago coming in,
right.
and I had a little shop on the side. And I'm trying to think that, there were definitely a few other businesses that I know
Mhm.
people have done this out of as well. People also sometimes get memberships at some of the, like, WeWorks and different types of Regis places where they can just kind of pop in and use it for the day
Right.
or something. So,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of opportunities.
That's great. Well, other than running maybe online ads, what's been an effective way to generate sales, attract buyers?
Yeah, it's different from when I started for sure. When I
Yep.
started, it was a lot of cold calling to get going. It's different world, much more digital as you mentioned. I still believe you're going to use your natural network, so who the people you know around you,
Okay.
and referrals are always going to be the best.
Mhm.
Um, I built my business on referrals, and if you're doing right by the clients, you're taking care of them, you're doing a great job in the fittings and measurements, they're gonna love you, they're gonna spread the word. Again, I didn't have to offer those extra bonuses, but I did to just kind of
Right.
give back a little bit.
Sure.
And then I think, nowadays, certainly social media.
Right.
The one thing I will say, this is a big mistake to avoid for anybody looking to start in this industry, is don't fall into the vanity trap of social media.
Sorry, don't fall into the
The vanity trap.
okay.
So it's like trying to show off and make it look like you have all this money and you're fancy, whatever. I can't tell you how many people that I used to coach and train that would come through the ranks of the different companies I worked at, where, I had hardly any pictures on social media at the time.
Okay.
And all they had was hundreds and hundreds of pictures on social media, trying to get those likes and those comments. People saying, "Oh, you look sharp. Oh, you're doing well," etc. But it was all fake, right? They really weren't making much money because they weren't spending time selling or getting referrals or building their
Right.
business. They were just trying to look good on social media for others.
Right.
And they probably spent, a quarter of their income just on their own wardrobe. And so, I used to always advise them, like, that can come later. Build your
Right.
foundation, do it with your network, do it with referrals, then worry about social media.
Got it. Nice.
One other thing to add to building your business, partnerships. So I used to have partnerships at different levels. So when I had my own business, I had, smaller partnerships. I was actually always a volunteer for American Cancer Society. So I
Okay.
was on their junior board. And through that, I partnered with them on different campaigns, et cetera. I got to meet a lot of, people. I would donate a portion back to the charity. I had partnerships at different times with luxury auto dealerships,
Mhm.
watch and jewelry stores. There's
How would
all sorts of great
ho
places.
just as an example for the
Sure.
luxury cars, how would a deal or a partnership their look like?
So let's say, you set a threshold, like let's say it's, Porsche. Maybe you don't want certain models, or maybe a better example is Mercedes. If you don't want the C class, you're like, hey, I want to make sure it's like E class and above.
Okay.
We'll give them maybe 2 shirts when they buy. So you would give them like a gift card, and then the dealer would just hand it out every time somebody purchased a car. And it was free for the dealer, so it's a bonus for the dealer to be able to say, "Oh, thanks for the purchase. Here's a couple free custom shirts." And the client would love it, and then you get, business out of it. So,
So who
again, it's a little
pays
bit of upfront cost.
yeah, who pays for the 2 custom shirts?
So I would. Just a
That was like
lead
a
cost.
lead generator.
Exactly. So that's
Got
basically
it.
the cost of my lead acquisition was 2 shirts, which is a controlled cost. I know what it's gonna be. They're hopefully gonna have a great experience and wanna keep getting more. So,
Right,
it often worked very, very well.
right.
Uh,
That's a really nice, win for the car dealership, salesperson
Absolutely.
being able to
Yeah,
offer
so
that.
there are plenty of relationships you can build like that. And then I had some clients that didn't have a ton of, money, so they were just my best referral partner. So they loved the free shirts, and they would just refer everybody under the sun, and they had tons of shirts from me for free, but it worked out for both of us.
Yes.
So one of the interesting things is this industry has given me the ability to work with many celebrities and athletes. It's kind of crazy some of the things I've gotten to experience
Mhm.
just because of this industry. So
Okay.
I actually had partnerships with some money managers and agents of athletes, et cetera, across the country. And, you get lots of courtside seats and, tickets from athletes and stuff. So it's been pretty cool. I mean, I've been in a lot of locker rooms at NFL stadiums and gotten to meet a lot of the people that I looked up to, in sports. So uh,
Nice.
it's an industry that you never really know where it could take you or who you could get introduced to
Nice.
as a result.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice bonus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Brandon?
I've now founded the Custom Clothers Collective. And so you can go to customclotherscollective.com. Any of the social medias under the same title.
Okay.
And we're going to be building a community of people who love this industry and want to do this as a side hustle or maybe full time.
Really? And to be able to share some of those contacts with through your offerings.
Absolutely. So, what I plan to do is obviously, like I said, factories, et cetera. A lot of these
Yeah.
things are hard and it's difficult. You can waste a lot of money. So, I'm going to be putting together a package of basically a course on how to become a custom clothier, right? So, it's the custom clothier accelerator program, and it's going to come with a number of fundamental courses to launch and grow your business. And so
Right.
I'll be teaching you all the trade secrets that I had and how to measure and save yourself some money, how to grow your business, et cetera. I just want to be able to give back to people. And I think it's a great side hustle, right? It's something I think a lot of people are passionate about. They can make a lot of money in and really have a great time doing it.
How much do you think somebody could make doing it as a side hustle?
Well, it does depend on, again, like your network and who you can get in front of. So if
Okay.
you're selling $600 suits versus a $2,000 suit, it's a big difference.
Right.
The other day I went and sold a couple guys and it was just a few suits and I was there maybe 2 hours and made about $4,000.
Right.
So it is very possible to make 5,
Mhm.
10, 15, 20,000 part-time even depending on your clientele. I
Right.
would say you can realistically go in and make a couple $1,000s a month without a ton of hard work if you have a decent network and you're willing to hustle and, you know,
Yes.
at least get those relationships built initially, right? Then it
Yeah.
becomes a lot easier with the repeat business.
Right. And it wouldn't be too difficult from a number crunching standpoint to sit down and say, like, just even that using the very broad numbers that we were to say,
Sure.
okay, like how much could I feasibly make per suit? How long is this going to take me? And then obviously the time that you want to devote for the marketing and advertising. And so,
If you want some basic numbers on it, if you are building your book of business through relationships,
mhm,
through your own network, through referrals, and if you get good at measurements and fittings, you could expect to take home 50% of whatever you're selling.
right,
So if you sold one $1,000 suit per week, that's $2,000 in a month, right?
right.
So
Yep.
pretty simple math right there.
Yeah. And that one customer could be multiple suits.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
never know. I've had people spend 30, $40,000 in one sitting, very easily. So it's all about who you can get in front of.
Mm. So, what's your best tip to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream?
This one burns me all the time. It's done is better than perfect, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that,
Mm,
but I will tell you it's something I've struggled with my whole life. I've always had a ton of ideas. I've always had different side hustles throughout the years. I've done consulting. I've had disinfecting businesses during COVID. I used to teach
wow.
drums. I've done a lot of things. But, when it came to certain things that I wanted to really build and scale, like when I had my custom suit business, I mean, I spent so much time worrying about the logo and, pricing, everything's just right. And it's just like, just get it out there, right? You can
Yep.
make it better later. Just launch, just start. So, if you're looking to start a custom suit business and you've been thinking about, I want to go into fashion, just start it. Just start telling people you're doing it and it'll force you into actually doing it, right? Then you have to deliver on it.
Yeah.
So that's the advice I'd always have for people.
And that's excellent advice. And actually, when you were saying that, I was thinking of an incident just before you and I got on this call. I was working on a PowerPoint presentation. It was just, Joan, it's done. Hit send
Yeah,
button already.
exactly. Yeah.
It's great enough.
My CEO, has really drilled this into my head. And now I find myself telling the team that I lead now, and it's just something that did not come natural to me. I was the, perfectionist and had to have it just right. And it's, man, so many things I missed out on because I just didn't start it right away.
Well, I've been involved in the personal development space for a very long time, and I'm going to be dating myself here, but I wrote, recorded, and produced an audio tape series called No Limit Confidence. And on the masters, which I had my business partner listen to before we did all the duplication, he hears me say that I'm a recovering perfectionist. And he starts laughing and he's like, I don't see a whole lot of recovering happening here. So it's
It's a
something I'm
hard one to
still
break.
working on. I'm getting pretty good at it, but haven't perfected it, I was gonna say.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, here I go. Okay, clearly I've got more work to do in that department.
It's a
Thank you
tough one.
so much, Brandon, for sharing your insights into the world of custom suit making and
I really
those tips for success. I really appreciate that. And for being today's side hustle hero.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I liked Brandon's examples of businesses and industries that he's partnered with in order to build his business, like car dealerships and tailors, and his lead magnets, like giving away 2 custom shirts with purchase. Even if custom suits aren't in your future, how can you apply these concepts to your own side hustle? I explored this with my self storage business. When I introduced document shredding as an additional income stream, I thought about businesses that could benefit from it. Enter bookkeepers, accountants, and tax preparers. In partnering with a local office of H&R Block, the tax preparation company, I provided them customized discount coupons for document shredding that they handed out, creating a win-win-win scenario. H&R Block offered added value to their clients. I gained new customers, and those customers enjoyed a discount on their very first visit. And remember the episode where I discussed the synergy between professional organizers and self-storage? Hosting free sessions with decluttering experts introduces potential clients to the organizer and creates a perfect opportunity for the storage facility. These win-win-win collaborations can really add to your bottom line. Consider gathering a small group of like-minded friends for a brainstorming session. Explore potential businesses to partner with, finding innovative ways to elevate your side hustle. Then share your discoveries with me. I'd love to hear what creative partnerships you come up with. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find a link to Brandon's website, LinkedIn, and the full show notes at our website, sidehustlehero.com. And you'll also find a link to my flagship video course, How to Turn Your Thoughts into Wanted Things. Because results things are constantly showing up in your life, but are they what you want? If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.